If you will listen to me, I'll tell you the most remarkable, unbelievable story you've ever heard. Years ago, I was traveling from Memphis to Cleveland by Greyhound bus on my way to a niece's wedding. She's an only child, and her parents, my brother and his wife, have spoiled her to pieces, but she's something of a favorite of mine, me with my weakness for people with an independent streak. So I was looking forward to the occasion. I was curious to see just what kind of young man Carrie would choose for a husband. Unusual, I was certain. But before I ever got to Cleveland, I met someone who was as far from being ordinary as the earth is from the sun. He got on in Cincinnati, and as luck would have it, took the seat next to me. I'd been reading all the way up from Memphis, and I was tired of it. I enjoy a good conversation, especially with a stranger, because I find I learn so many unexpected things. I was hoping this young man would be sociable, and he didn't disappoint me. We hadn't even pulled out of the station when he said to me, "So they finally found him, did they?" When I looked at him, he was pointing at one of the articles in the paper about someone finding Adolf Hitler in the hills of Argentina. I said, "That's what they say." "You think it's really him?" he said, looking closer. "Land, I wouldn't know," I said. "The age is right, and the picture looks like he might look if he was 102, but it's so hard to tell." "I suppose it could be," he said. "It's probably not," I said. "It's probably just someone who looks an awful lot like he could look." "I like this one," he said. He pointed to another story, one about a pig who had just given birth to a baby boy. I said, "Well now, I personally find that one hard to believe. It doesn't seem hardly possible, medically speaking." "I guess that's why they print the pictures," he said, pointing to a photograph of the pig and the baby. "Otherwise people wouldn't believe it. And those scientists, you know they can do just about anything." "You're right, they can," I said. "And I don't know if I approve. Pigs having babies and all. But they didn't ask me. What things like this tell me is that the world is a good deal more surprising than many people think." "Well, that's the problem," he said. "How many people think? I mean, really use their noodle. Not many, I don't think. They're limited in their thinking, narrow-minded. So many people, all they do is watch TV," I said. "They sit around like lumps and wonder why nothing ever happens to them. Out of the ordinary, I mean." "Exactly," he said, "because things just don't happen." Well, I just knew I liked this young man right from the start. I told him all about the wedding and Carrie and how I came from Memphis, so naturally we talked a bit about Elvis, and I told him I'd been to Graceland several times, but I had never met Elvis when he was alive. I told him the closest I had ever come to meeting somebody famous was the time I was in Las Vegas with my husband Al when he was still alive, and Tom Jones walked by us in one of the casinos. Al swore up and down that it wasn't Tom Jones, but I knew it was. And then I asked this man if he'd met anyone famous, and he said yes. When he was much younger, he had met Marilyn Monroe. I told him, "You don't look that old," because she had been dead and gone for a good many years, and he said, "Well, as I say, I was very young when it happened. There's a bit of a story attached to it. Would you like to hear it?" I told him I would, very much. There's nothing I like more than a good story. He laughed and rubbed his chin. "You know, I've never told this to anyone before," he said. "It was 1962. I remember it as clear as if it was yesterday." "I know what you mean," I said. "I can still see Tom Jones in that casino." "I was an only child and my parents were divorced," he said. I told him what a shame I thought that was. The children are always the ones to get hurt. "Well, yes, I guess that's so," he said. "It was pretty hard on me. Most of my friends had two parents. I was visiting my father in California, and he was too busy to spend much time with me. This was back in the days before the invention of quality time. Dad was loosely associated with the film industry and distribution. He liked to think he was a big shot, but he was the only one who believed it. So Dad was the kind of guy who spent most of his life fooling himself, I guess you'd say." "Oh, I don't know," I said. "Don't be too hard on him. A lot of people want more than they wind up with." "When he started out, he was an actor, a very handsome man, the kind who used to be described as fatally attractive, you know, a real lady killer. Some people tell me I favor him. You're a fine-looking young man," I told him, and he was. He laughed. "Well, thank you," he said, "but the thing about Dad was that he couldn't act a lick. Had no talent for it at all. Sorry about that, Dad." "It does take more than looks," I said. "Talent is very important. And luck. I believe in luck." "You can say that again. Luck determines so much, more than we think. The accident of birth, for example." He pointed at the picture in the paper again. "I wonder what connections this kid will have with a pig for a mother." I laughed. "Did you meet Marilyn Monroe through your father?" "In a way, yes. I met her at a party. Dad had to go and I had to tag along. It sure wasn't my idea. I'd already been to more than my share of parties. I thought my dad's job was parties. I'd have rather gone to a ball game any day." "You poor kid," I said. "Oh, I guess it wasn't so bad," he said. "Anyway, Dad sat me on a chair, got me a glass of punch, and told me to stay put and have a good time." "Sure, Dad, right?" And he went off to play the big shot. So there I was. I was miserable, of course. I remember hating the clothes I was wearing and all the people in that room. I suppose most of them were very famous, but to me they were strangers, laughing hugely about something I did not understand. "Oh," I said, I could just picture him sitting on that chair. "She was laughing too when I first saw her. Marilyn Monroe, I mean," he said. "Only she was looking right at me, laughing at my plight. She came over to me across the room and bent low from the waist to look at me face to face, with the result, well, she was wearing a low-cut dress, so you can imagine the result that presented itself to my sight." I said, "Yes." I didn't mean to look, but there she was. It was a first for me, that particular view. Nothing like starting at the top, eh? We both laughed at that. Well, I gulped and looked at her face. She was pretty, but so were a lot of women in that room. What distinguished her was a kindness that I could see in her eyes. "I know what you mean," I said. "There was something special about her. She was a real quality person." "Yes, that's right, she was," he said. "She crouched down and said, 'Hiya, kiddo.' That's what she called me, kiddo. 'What's a fellow like you doing in a place like this?' She was joking with me, but I missed it. I was missing a lot then." "Well, you were just a child," I said. "Exactly," he said. "I'm here with my father." I told her very seriously. She laughed and put me at my ease. She stayed and we began to talk, me sitting there, her crouched down, wrinkling her beautiful dress. It was a white dress. "Oh, I can just see this," I said. She was a truly kind person. She was to me, in a white dress. A few people called to her. I'd hear her name, "Marilyn," but she'd wave at them, smile, and not leave. I was greatly flattered by this. What I sensed was special attention. "Who wouldn't be?" I said. "Yep, it sure felt special to me. We were the quietest corner of that party, but I felt like the spotlight was mine." "She had a way of treating people that made them feel special," I said. "It was something she had, a quality." "You're so right," he said. "I remember her holding up a glass of champagne and asking me if I'd like a sip. I looked at it and said, 'Is that anything like beer?' She laughed and handed the glass to me. Now even the glass seemed charmed to me. Do you know what I mean? So feminine. Not like a can of beer or a beer mug," I said. "Yes, that's it. I'd held them, but never a fluted drinking glass made of crystal. I sipped from it like an acolyte, and I vividly recall the taste. Ice cold, bubbly, tart, more of a nip than beer, sharper. Oh, I love champagne," I said. "Al and I drank a bottle of cold duck every year on our anniversary." "It's hard for me to drink it now," he said. "It reminds me so much of her. Do you know what she did? She leaned over and whispered to me, 'The secret is to drink only the bubbles.'" "Oh, my goodness," I said. "What a thing to say." "Well, you can imagine," he said. I took another sip and studiously attempted to taste only the bubbles. I laughed. He had a wonderful way of expressing himself. And that was the first time that I smelled her when she whispered that to me, a rich, deep, heavenly whiff of her, warm and good, sweet, spicy. "She wore Chanel No. 5, I said. "Al used to buy me Chanel No. 5 for Christmas, the cologne." "Oh, the smell of that went right through my head," he said. "Just like the champagne and all the attention she was paying to me. Imagine that. Me. What did I know? Who was I? You're going to think I'm crazy, but do you know what? No, what? I believe she had a better sense of who I was than I did. Do you know what I mean?" "Yes," I said. "Yes, I do. She understood people. She had a way with them. It was instinctive with her, intuitive. Well, I had this almost premonition. Do you believe in premonitions?" "Oh, yes." Well, I had one, and it was telling me that if I could stick with her, I would learn something important. But I didn't know what. But I could tell she was wise. She knew what? The secrets, the important stuff. Do you know what I'm saying? Yes, it may have been your subconscious, I said. That may be, he said. Whatever it was, I trusted it. Trusted her. I remember her voice. Yes, I said, recalling it from Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. I love the sound of it. To this day, when I hear it, I think of champagne and perfume, as well as kindness and joy. That's a perfect description, I told him. That's exactly how she sounded. Yes, well, there we were, the original odd couple. If you want to analyze it, I guess you could say that looking at me, she saw something. An innocence, I said. I think so, something she had lost and could never have again. And you could also say she saw the child she knew she never could have. Oh dear, I said, you can't know what that's like for a woman. No, but if you want to know what I think she really saw when she saw me, it was just a kid. A lonely kid trapped in a monkey suit at another Hollywood bash. She despised all those parties, I said, all that phony. Anyway, there we were, like I say. She was the most glamorous and celebrated woman in the world, and me? I was a punk kid from Omaha who was flunking algebra. I was so scrawny I couldn't make the JV football team. I wasn't even using a razor in those days. And yet, he said, you could feel there was something between you, I said, something that was meant to be. I've never put a name on it before now, he said, but that's what it was, something that was meant to be, the feeling that we belong together. Destiny, I said, kismet. He said, as I look back on it now, I think I believe that more than ever before. You can't explain everything, I said. Some things are just meant to be. Oh my, that's a wonderful story. Oh, he said, that's not all of it.